Do you dream about your next trip? You're in the right place. On the Time to Talk Travel podcast, we come to you weekly to share places to go and what to do when you get there. Let's dive into this week's adventure.
Hi, we're back with Time to Talk Travel. Today's episode is going to be centered around how to be a better tourist. We don't necessarily mean how to not behave badly, which we've covered before in excruciating detail with all the cringy things that people do when they're on vacation in other places. More about how to really get the most out of your experience and respect the area you're going to and just make it so that you learn while you're there and you have a great time.
We keep hearing about places around the world where the local community is just oversaturated when it's travel season. And I was reading the case in Barcelona. They actually took one bus stop off the map because there were so many tourists at that thing that people couldn't get home from work. And having spent 6 weeks in Barcelona last year, I can tell you it's true. They have the best bus system that I've ever seen when I go traveling. But there are certain times a day where you can't get a seat and you can't get even on the bus. It's just so overcrowded, especially in the hot spots. This comes out of over tourism. And I would say to me, the number one tip when I go to any destination, you really do try to shop local, be local. And the best way I have seen to do that and still learn the culture is a food tour. I have done food tours in every city, and you get the history of the area. You're eating in 4 or 5 different local shops minimum. I did a food tour in Puerto and there were 10 different food trucks, taco trucks. So that's my big one. Shop local, eat local, get the real flavor of the community, but that is one easy way to do it.
I think I'm on the same page with you with the food. I mean, I really think food tells you about a place more than almost anything else can. And I know when I went to Puerto Rico, we did a tour with Spoon Food Tours, and the guide combined history and food, was telling us about statues as we walked through places and took us to historical things. We were learning about the local liquor and how it used to be made in the bootleg way, and now there was a legal version. And it was fascinating. Same thing when we were in Sri Lanka. We went to a village and they made us a meal the traditional way, and we got to see the whole things. If you don't kind of immerse yourself in the food while you're there, you're missing a giant opportunity to learn more about the location.
Yeah, definitely. Unless you're like me and food, well, and Sharon, and food is a bit of a challenge. You can still go for the experience. I can't have gluten or dairy. Now, ironically, in Europe, I can eat a lot more food for various reasons we'll get into in another episode. But there's drink tours too. Quite often, there is a lot of history to that as well, whether you're in somewhere of the Caribbean islands and there's the whole history of rum and sugar, and it's deep. The drink tours often have the same sort of history and fun. You can taste everything. You don't have to get smashed on it. But if food isn't really your thing, then that's another option. If you ever have the chance to go home with a local, we were talking about going with you, Des, to, was it Ventura Beach? And
Vero,
where?
Vero Beach.
Vero, sorry. Yeah, that is my first choice. I would talk to friends and see where they can be my tour guide and basically take me home. I would love to take a bunch of Texans to Canada. I think that would be awesome and hilarious all at the same time. Look at going with a local, go with a friend. Don't put the pressure on them to necessarily be your tour guide, because that can be a very stressful position, but at least get their list. Go on your own and get their list of where to go.
The local thing is a great point. When I was on Regent cruises, they had some options where they would contract with locals in each area. We went to their house for tea or had a tour of a traditional home in Germany on the ocean front and how that looked. And it was really neat to get the lay of the land and the little walking tour at the beginning of the day and then have the rest of the day free, because then you kind of had a basis to go exploring where you had a deeper understanding of what to look for and what was unique. It's one of the reasons why I love going into coffee shops or grocery stores places, because I think that most people are excited by tourists who show curiosity and respect for where they're living. And so getting into conversations with people who are sitting there and just being like, hey, I left some time free. What is cool about your town that someone wouldn't normally go to, or what should I look for that's unique that people don't realize? And you'll hear the most random stories, like why the porches are designed this way because of something that happened back when, or did you know that this on the house signifies that a captain lived there?
I agree. Naz, when I was in Portugal last in Lisbon, we took a sailboat sunset cruise, and I just thought it was just going to be pretty. But the boat captain would stop and tell us things. They had had a tsunami years ago that just devastated, killed like 70,000 people and wiped out the town, buildings included. When they rebuilt specifically so that the streets ran perpendicular to the water so that if water went up, it would be able to run back down. That was fascinating to me. And I wasn't going for a history tour, I was going for a relaxing sunset thing. But I love when you can find out little things. And Mo, to your point, I agree 100%. I'm going back to Lisbon and I'm leading a group of women to see different hotspots. I hadn't been to Porto before, but I'm part of a Facebook group of women who travel. And there's a gal in there who begged, please come see my town. Please come to Porto. I will show you around. I will get you the best wines. And you're right. The locals know exactly where to go. Typically, when I go to a hotel, I don't like to see the concierge for tips. I like to ask the desk clerk
Yep.
because I say, hey, where do you go on Friday nights? Where do you go dancing? Where do you like to go get lunch? It's a whole different answer than the concierge is going to serve up, where they have a different relationship or maybe even different expectations.
It can also help you economically, right? You're not going to the touristy spots that cost the most and being gouged. We went to Playa del Carmen twice last year, once on our own, complete tourists. We're like, oh my gosh, this was so expensive. Went back again with our friends who spend 4 months of the year there for the last 4 years. Yeah, they know a few better spots. They took us one road over. You just don't know to go one more road over, right? Or like 4 more blocks to a super quiet beach or into a neighborhood with ruins in it that you would never know. I do talk to the person at the desk rather than the concierge as well. And when you stay there for a few days, you get to talk to people like that. If you only go and you're going from here to here to here and you don't spend any time, you don't meet those accidental tour guides. So we took a taxi off the resort in Nevis into Charlestown. Our cab driver was so enthusiastic about her town that she drove us around for half an hour. This town is not even a half an hour big, but she drove us up and around and all through. And you know what? I would have walked past the beach and would have been like, "That's a beautiful beach." And she's, well, that's where they used to hang pirates, right? And she goes, every island has one. And I'm like, awesome. What tour is that on? You know what I mean? I love those accidental tour guides. They're just passionate and they just want to tell you.
I was going to say that was another tip on not being a crappy tourist, or how to be a better tourist, was being a slow tourist and not just doing the day trip into the town. The towns count on the tourist dollars a lot of times. And if you're not actually staying overnight, having dinner and then having breakfast, if you're just kind of running in on a bus and grabbing a bottle of water and maybe a sandwich because you're hopping, they're not getting the benefit that they count on to survive in a lot of cases.
You know, if there's a cruise ship stop, I kind of try not to go to that area, right? Unless you're on a cruise ship, then that's where you're going to go. But even if you are, if you have enough time, find a way, find some transportation to go another town over or to the other side of an island or whatever it is, just so you can see something a little different.
I think everybody, whether they're a travel writer or not, has had an experience where they've seen an article about an area they grew up in or an area they visit a lot. And they're like, that's what you picked to tell people about to do here? What are you thinking? That's crap. That's not what we do, or that's not the best, or that's what only people who come to visit, it's not immersive. And so I think there is that recognition that we all know that locals have a better place. I know that I'm coming fresh off a trip to Bermuda with my friend who grew up there. And so having that perspective from her and listening to her talk to the different taxi drivers that we were in with about what's changed around the island, I would have gone and been like, oh, the roofs are pretty here. I love them. And when I told her that, she was able to tell me that the reason they have the white roofs with the white ridging is because The houses have rainwater collection tanks underneath them, and that's how they get their water. And so the roofs are limestone, which filters, covered with a special mix of whatever, and it makes it so that the water comes down and starts the filtration process before it even has to go through the tanks. And are you kidding me? And then she's like, locals rent boats and go raft up and hook together and go in a cove and play on the boat all day and snorkel and take naps and drink and eat and picnic. And we did that with her friends who were locals. If I was a tourist there, I would have gone on a tour, paid $1 bazillion more, and not got to see 3 different types of parrotfish. I mean, I got a fun saddlebag sunburn on my thighs because I spent so much time with my butt up in the air looking at fish.
Love that. You're absolutely right. That's exactly what Mo was talking about. Connect with those locals. I mean, vet them the best you can so that you're not running off with the next serial killer. But
I was gonna say, unless you're not in an area where you should do that. There are some places where it's best to stay put at a resort, be safe, enjoy the all-inclusive.
Mhm.
Sometimes there's a reason for that. So
Yep.
do your homework. But if you can, go.
100%. Another thing, do you really need a drone? Do you ever? It used to be selfies were everywhere. And I am bad about this because, again, I love shooting video and
Mhm.
I desperately wanted to buy a drone a couple of years ago. I almost did for my Iceland trip because I was so sure I'd have these amazing videos. And I was so glad I didn't when I got there because there was a massive windstorm. The drone would have been gone in 2 seconds flat. I would have lost all that money. But these days, it's so common. I mean, we all know what it's like, even in our homes, in our backyard neighborhood. Why does my neighbor need a drone to come see what's going on in everybody's? No. So let the professionals use the drones.
Have you guys ever done a Airbnb experience? Locals offer up things to do. I've only done a couple of them and they've been amazing. We did one where we made pasta in an Italian woman's house, just north of Lake Garda. We still make gnocchi that way, right? You learn something. It's a life skill now that we learned from someone. And I got to see in their home and we got to support her locally.
I did one in Santorini. It was a local photographer doing the flying dress experience.
Oh,
You could book through a flying dress company and pay triple what I paid through the Airbnb experience photographer. And I worried about it because I was, why is she so much less than everybody? Well, she was so much less because she's not going through this massive company that's promoting it and advertising everywhere. It was probably $100 to hire her for 3 hours. She did all the photo editing afterwards, sent it to me. I had to pay an extra 20 euros to her friend to make the dress actually fly, you know? But
oh my
I
God.
mean, it was awesome.
I'm so
I hope
doing that
you
next
do.
year. My friend is there today, and I don't think she's doing it. And it's killing me that she's not doing it.
That dress has made its own tour. It's kind of like the traveling pants. I have sent it to 3 different people. We just keep it coming. In fact, someone is over there now using it, and then it's coming back to me. And I'm surprising the people going to Portugal, bringing it there. Even though Portugal isn't really, we are going to Nazaré, which is right on a coast. And I just thought, I'm going to bring it, even if they just have to throw it on in a bathroom and just stand. We'll
Okay,
take
so
one or two.
you bought the flying dress then.
I did. Oh, on
Okay.
Etsy. Yes, because again, it was a $500 photographer experience to wear a dress that they had 8 choices
Yeah.
in different colors. Or I could go on Etsy for $60, buy the dress, have it sent to me, pay this gal on Airbnb $100. Ultimately, she did have dresses as well, but she didn't when I booked it originally. You had to.
Okay.
Someone said, "Man, did that take up your whole suitcase?" No, I roll everything. It was fine.
Mhm.
Took up
Mhm.
maybe a fourth of it, but it was fine.
You can do it
Yeah.
other places.
Like,
Share the flying dress love.
I'm happy to. And ultimately, maybe we have a whole flying dress book on everybody's stories that wore the dress. That would be fun.
And I was going to say, there are also other sites as well. So it benefits to go on through a site because there's usually some type of vetting process. They may have insurance on their guides. They may require a background check. You can feel a little safer. There's a site called With Locals, and that also does matches where you can do local experiences or pair up with a private guide if you want one. And I cannot remember which one it was, but there was something similar when I was in Texas. Houstonians that used to do unique tours. You could go under The buildings in Houston, there are tunnels that connect a bunch of them, the office buildings downtown. And I was writing an article that had some of the weird and strange things to do around Houston that wouldn't necessarily be the ones you would think of. And I remember going in the tunnels. I remember doing the water wall over near the mall that you can take pictures in front of, feeding the police horses, which I didn't even know was a thing, but you could
I
go to the
did
police
not know that.
stables and feed the horses. And my son was little at the time and he thought it was just the coolest thing ever. There's these things wouldn't pop up on a normal tourist site. But again, if you're looking for someone who may have been vetted, a site is usually a better way to go, or you can ask them if they have any certifications or insurance.
And share your itinerary if you're
Mhm.
alone, right,
Mhm.
Des?
That's wise. That's wise. Even if you have the Find 360 on your phone, when you're in a zone that doesn't have Wi-Fi, they're not going to find you. So,
Mm-mm.
agreed.
TikTok to find alternatives. So I go to New York next week. Okay, top 10 restaurants, probably about 7 of them, everyone agrees at the moment.
Mhm.
But then if you go a bit further, you say, okay, where else? What alternatives? So instead of this one, try this one. I found a plant-based ice cream crazy dessert shop, which makes me excited. I never get dessert.
Mhm.
So little things like that, doing your research in advance can help too. I use TikTok for more than dance videos, but people think, oh, it's just dance videos. No, there's a ton of local information that can be super helpful. Like Now says, you got to vet it. But as far as recommendations on stores and restaurants, events, things like that, it's a great source because in the now, it's not, oh, well, this was from 4 years ago, you know?
I agree. I started doing that a couple years ago when we went to Rome. I followed this woman and she's a travel agent in Rome. And boy, is she queen of that niche on TikTok. Whenever I go to a place, back in the day, I used to go to Twitter and put
Yeah.
in the hashtag Greece and where do I stay? Now it's TikTok.
And realtors are doing it on TikTok as well. The house tours are fun, but I've noticed that a lot of them, when they're trying to lay down their base and their expertise in an area, are doing things to do in the area because they know people
Mm.
are looking, especially with families who are moving there. Is there enough to do with kids? What can I do when I'm there? And they want their clients to kind of feel at home when they get there. So I'm finding that the realtors are actually doing a really great job. If you look up a realtor in the area on TikTok, you can probably find a couple things to do that are very local.
That's a great tip. I've seen them do it, and
Absolutely.
I just why are they talking what
Yep.
does that have to do with selling the house is what restaurants are but you're right, you
Yep.
wanna know
Especially if you're relocating from out of state or out of the country like I did. I had no idea. We were starting from zero with where to go and what our options were. I actually did find a real estate agent on Facebook who helped us remotely do that and kind of gave what kind of lifestyle do you want, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And then the other thing, I know I was in Vermont for years. I'm in New Hampshire now, even in Texas, a lot of farm experiences or farm type meals are really interesting to do and will teach you a little bit about the area. In Texas, near us, we had a meadery, we had wineries, and I love that stuff when I travel. And they
Mhm.
usually tell some good stories and have some animals for the kids. And in Vermont, everything is about local and produce. So going to a farm meal, if you're there during the summer, can be a great experience and a way to meet with locals too, because a lot of times it's not a tourist event. You may just happen to snag it while there's other people from the community there because it's an event for
Mm.
them as well.
There's the most random little things, blueberry festivals,
Mm.
and like you said, you get to kind of go and experience it with locals.
When I was in Arcos last year, it was purely by accident that they were having their San Miguel festival the same time
Mhm.
we were there. It's this big festival that all of the women wear their flamenco dresses and they have tent after tent after tent with different companies sponsoring each one where you go in and it's a different live band playing and different drinks being served up. It's like all the old culture comes back. They have the men riding horses in their old hats. It's really embracing the deep historical culture of the community. And I thought, I loved that we landed there at the same time and got to experience that. I was just upset I didn't have a flamenco dress to put on.
Right.
You stand out like a sore thumb. It's like going to Oktoberfest. My friends
Yeah.
warned me, you must wear a dirndl. He must wear a lederhosen. You do not show up at Oktoberfest in jeans or skirt. No, you have to wear the garb. And I wish I'd known that because first of all, I'd like to own a flamenco dress. I just think it looks fun.
With things like that, when you're going, it can be a little, how do you do the research on? How do you figure out what's going on? How do you figure out what the locals are going to be doing? How do you kind of gauge what's important in the community? For me, at least, there are a couple little ways that I'll look. What are the local Facebook pages, the towns posting about? If you Google the town or area and ask donations, a lot of tour companies or hotels will give back to the community. You can see what the community supports. If there is a site that they are all supporting, even if it's not one of the top ones, there's a reason. It's important to them. Go there. And
Mhm.
the other thing I like to do is look at hotels that offer resident specials. You can Google hotels, Porto resident specials, because a hotel that is attracting the residents and offering those resident specials, if they're staying in a hotel in that area, there's a reason why they're going there. And if it's successful, then that might be one you want to look at. And they're giving back to the area as well by allowing
Mhm.
locals to have the same experience. When we were in Sri Lanka, there was a pricing for people who had a Sri Lankan residency and people who didn't, and tourists paid more so that Sri Lankans could also go and enjoy the sites as well.
Absolutely.
That is a good tip. I'm trying to think of other places that have done that, but all I can think of right now is Florida with their Disney, the resident discounts. But that's
Yeah.
probably just a way of saying thank you to the people who can go anytime. And
Right.
another thing, you don't have to take an Uber everywhere if you can just take the time to figure out their bus system. Google Maps helps with that now. It'll
And
tell you,
even
get on this bus at this corner.
exactly. And on Uber, you can go in and select public transportation in some areas. I know I've used it extensively when I've been in Atlanta or when I've been in New York on the subway or the metro. I love taking local transportation. I like it. I feel like it gives you a better feel of everything. And obviously, it's cheaper, and I'd rather save my money for food and fun things. But when we were in Bermuda, we took the bus a bunch of places, but then we took the bus from one end of the island to the other, got off there, and then we had bought a day pass. And always look for the day passes if you're in a new place, because a lot of times the pricing is great and it allows you to get on, get off, look at things, get on, get off. It included the ferry, and she had never done the ferry back from St. George's, and it comes all the way back to the other side of the island at Dockyard. It was these amazing views, and she turned into this little mini tour guide on the top because she's like, oh, that's where that is. Oh, see that tower? That's the incinerator. That's where they burned all the island's trash. You used to have to take your trash there. Now they pick up. And all these people are coming and they're asking her questions. But she had never done that before because she had never taken the ferry back and forth. It was never a necessity for her because they had scooters, but it was so cool. I love public transportation.
It's better for the community than clogging the streets with the Ubers. New York is a place like that where I don't always take the subway unless I know it's going to get me somewhere much faster. Uber's just easier, but I know I should.
I used to take the subway in New York, and I'll see what I end up doing next week. It kind of went through a phase of maybe that's not such a good idea. There's a difference if I'm by myself at night or if it's a difference when I'm with my husband and or a group of friends. Like all of those will play into those sorts of decisions.
That's
When I
fair.
was in New York last time, I felt really good on the subway. I didn't have any issues, and I've been there alone and with my husband within the last couple of months. I will
Okay.
say Atlanta, I got on the subway in the middle of the day and I was like, this was maybe not a good idea.
You mean
At one of the
MARTA?
stops. Yeah,
Yeah.
MARTA.
On
That's right.
MARTA? Yeah.
So, but I mean, I did
Um,
it. And so I think with maybe in other countries too, so I'm going to tell my little narrative here of Bermuda because this is just a fun story and I love it. So we're on the bus back from Dockyard heading back to Southampton and Bermuda, and it's the last day of school for all the kids in Bermuda. These kids are getting on the buses and the bus driver knows them all because that's how the kids get back and forth to school, on the public buses. And she's, oh, hi, see you. Oh, have fun. Have fun all summer. You were good. How were you? Great. And she knows them all, right? We get to this stop and we hear her having a conversation with this little kid. We can't see the kid. And she's like, oh, you have to give that to one of your friends. You can't bring that on the bus. You got to give it to one of your friends. The kid had just bought a snow cone and was eating it and can't get on the bus with it. And the kid's like, I'm going to stay here and get the next bus. And she's like, what am I going to tell your mama? And the kid's like, it's fine. She won't mind. And she's like, fine. I'm going to tell your mom I saw you, but you get on that next bus. And if that next bus, you're not done with your snow cone, you give it to a friend or throw it out. And it was just so funny. It's the little moments. They knew everyone and the kids were so funny. And it was part of the culture. It feels like you understand things a little bit more. And my friend had told me what it was like to grow up on an island where people know your parents, you say your family name and they know who you are. And it was just illustration of it?
I had a similar experience. We were staying in Positano, but wanted to go to actual Amalfi. You could pay a private driver $80, or you could get on the bus. I want to say it was 12, maybe for both Daly and me. And it was so easy. It wasn't fun walking from our hotel to because it was up and around a corner, but that's Amalfi. Everything is up and
Mhm.
down and stairs and windy. But it was a 10-15 minute walk, and you'd wait at the bus stop. You'd buy your little bus ticket right there at the corner store.
Mhm.
And then you'd wait for the bus the 5 minutes. It was a fifth the cost. And we went back and forth twice in one day because we thought it was going to be too cold for bathing suits, and then it wasn't. So we had to go back daily to get our bathing suit, then go back again. We just kicked back and relaxed. But that same bus was the school bus,
Mhm.
the city buses that runs. And I thought, people are living in these homes right there on the cliff of the Amalfi Coast, going to school. This is amazing. And it'd be fun. Some of them would say, oh, you coming to my house today? And similar conversations, like you said, they're living their life, and you're sitting amongst the locals.
That's honestly why I like renting a Airbnb home getaway thing, is because you do have to go to the grocery store. You do have to get gas. You have to actually immerse yourself. And I love a foreign grocery store. It's almost like a kid in a candy store, literally, because there's so many things you've never tried and you don't even know what it is. And it'll be just kind of watching people going, what are you picking up over there? What are the kids begging for? What's the bottle of wine the mom's grabbing? A ton of fun.
100%. That was Barcelona. We'd go to the
Mhm.
Mercado almost every day.
In a lot of places that you do go every day. You just get the food for what you need today and
Yeah.
go back again the next day.
They had some funky meats and different
Mhm.
wines, and oh, so affordable. $3, €3 for a good bottle of wine. You're for
Oh,
real?
right? It's cheaper
Yes,
than
I need
water.
to take all this home. Yeah.
I mean, when I traveled for work all the time and, if you travel for work, don't get trapped into bringing home presents every single time because it gets
Mhm.
tricky if people come to expect them. So I used to bring boxed cereals at one point when my kids were little, and then I started picking up local candy bars or something. I'd
Yeah.
ask, I'd be, what's the candy bar that is from your area that people don't normally have? But it's fascinating the different food things that you pick up on. Bermuda's food is expensive. The grocery stores are expensive. You go in there, you're, oh my goodness, that's how much. It's like
Mhm.
Alaska level on TikTok where they're talking about they're paying $18 for strawberries or something. However, again, a random local thing, they get shipments in every month. A lot of the bars and things like that, they'll order and it'll come freight, and there's tariffs and importation fees for things. And that's why they may cost a little bit more because they have to pay a very specific tax on how much liquor they're bringing in. So this one person was telling us about how this one bar has a special, and it's mostly locals, I assume, $50 all you can drink end of the month because they're bringing their new inventory in and they're trying to clear out everything else they have. And I'm like, wow, yeah, did not know that. Definitely don't think that's out there, a lot. One other bus thing that I will mention, I think I take for granted my ability to walk everywhere. I like to walk places and I
Mm.
assume I can do it because in the US, I stay in a lot of cities and things, and I like to get up and take a walk and go to a bakery or something in the morning. When there are bus routes that are really robust in other countries and you're looking at it and it has a lot of stops, there may be a reason for that. And it may be because it's not
Mm.
pedestrian friendly. So, Bermuda, beautiful. I did manage to walk across. We were on a very narrow part of the island. I walked across to watch sunrise on another beach on the other side. Got there fine. It wasn't busy. Came back. It was fine, but there's not sidewalks or things. And the scooters and the cars,
Mm.
the roads in some areas, you would have to press yourself along a stone wall and edge along. You cannot walk. That is why they have
That's
so many bus stops and shelters. And so I was able to do the little route. I wouldn't have been able to walk further. I certainly wouldn't have been able to go walk to a store or find something to eat in the morning. So just one thing to be aware of and maybe ask about. That's always my expectation that I can walk places if I need to. It's not always true.
Capri
Mhm.
was like that in
Mhm.
Italy. There's one part you can walk up the
Yep.
stairs through the middle, but if you're just trying to get to this one lemon tree restaurant
Mhm.
and think you're just gonna hoof it up the
No.
hill, nope. I mean, again, up against the side. Arcos, Spain was the same. The vans, the cars would have to pull their mirrors in
Mhm.
because the buildings were built way back when people just walked
Mhm.
everywhere, or they might have a horse and buggy.
Yep.
Cars were not even a thought in their mind. And so now when the cars go through, I would never
Mhm.
drive a rental through there because you're going to scrape everything. But
Yep.
Mhm.
but those who do know they've got this much space. And if you're walking out of a store, you better walk right back in if you see the car coming because there's nowhere to go. Good to know.
Mhm.
I think we've given a bunch of tips. This
Yeah.
is great information.
Definitely. I think that when you really try to kind of immerse yourself and ask the questions and not be afraid to ask them and figure out what the locals are doing, you just have a richer experience anywhere. You get more out of it when you're not just going with these people told us to do these 5 tourist things and that's what we're going to do. It's kind of expanding beyond that.
Doesn't it make you wanna learn every language? I just wanna go and be able to talk to them, and
Mm.
thankfully, a lot of people will speak English, but geez, I wish I knew more languages.
I agree. At least learn thank
Mm.
you, you're
Mhm.
welcome, and hello and goodbye, at
Mhm.
least. And how much.
I
But then
And
that
there's the
gets me in
bathroom, or the
trouble. I
restroom.
say how much and then they think I know and I'm okay, stop. I just
Yeah.
humoring you.
I love history and everything. I say it every single time. I take pictures of, plaques when I see them and things. And I love Google Translate now because even if it's in another language, when you take the picture with the
Yeah.
text in it and pop it into Google, the mobile app on the phone, you can just hit translate to translate it. Or if it's busy, I don't like being pushed in by people. I'll take picture of the plaque, back up and go read
Mhm.
it somewhere else if it's in English so that I'm not standing right up there in front because
We use
I like
that.
to learn. I like to look things up. I want to know why things are. I want to look at them later and see. And so
And
my friend was
remember.
teasing me because she grew up in Bermuda, and I'm like, "Oh, did you know that blah 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 blah?" And she's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I looked it up."
Quite a bit last year in Europe. I mean, even in airports, there were people I didn't understand the signs, and some
Mhm,
and Portuguese is different than Spanish,
mhm.
and it's so much trickier in my opinion.
I think we have covered a ton, and we just really hope everyone goes out there with the spirit of exploration on your trips for the rest of this summer and as you move forward. Until next time, thanks for joining us on another episode of Time to Talk Travel.
Happy travels.
This has been another episode of Time to Talk Travel, brought to you by #travels.com. You can keep in touch with us between episodes by checking out our site, joining our newsletter, or connecting with us on social. We've always got the information you need in our episode notes. Until next time, happy travels, and thanks for being a part of our trip.